In today's webinar, what we're going to be covering is just a little bit of brief information about Innovia Foundation. Again, for those who might not be familiar with who we are, we're going to run through the 2023 community grants process, just so everybody's clear on what the timeline is, what are the guidelines, what's the application process like, a little bit about our review process, and again, the question and answer phase of our presentation today. So I know most of you are probably pretty familiar with Innovia, but just as a brief recap, so we are a 501c3 public charity, and our mission is to ignite generosity that transforms lives and communities. Our vision is for vibrant and sustainable communities where every person has the opportunity to thrive, and our nonprofit partners are how that all happens. So again, thank you for being an important player in taking care of the people in your communities. The geographic area that we cover as Innovia is a 20 county service area, 10 in Eastern Washington, 10 counties in North Idaho. Over the years, since 1974, when we were founded, we've been able to distribute about $115 million in grants. We currently have $160 million in assets and have just over 700 individual funds that have been established by donors who want to use their dollars to support philanthropic programs and opportunities. So because of that donor generosity, this shows that we were able to, in our last year, award out 1,700 grants totaling $10 million in 2021. About 2/3 of those grants, which is almost 8 million, were distributed through our donor advised funds and our designated funds. So we have several ways that our grants get out the door besides our competitive grants process. And some of those are through direct donor recommendations from the funds that they have here. Of the funding last year, another $300,000 went through our scholarship programs. So just a plug for that, our scholarship round is open now. It opened December 1st. Closes March 1st. And if you have anyone in your life who's going to be looking for a scholarship to go to college, I'd encourage them to check out our scholarship page of the website, and they can find out what those opportunities are. Also want to say about 25% of our available funds last year went out to our 20 county region, either through our competitive grant programs or in support of community initiatives within those 20 counties. And when I talk about community initiatives, those are things like our Launch Northwest program, which is a really ambitious program that we announced just about a year ago. And we're working with partners throughout the region to establish promise scholarships for to make post-secondary education accessible for every child throughout our region. And so that's kind of the big initiative that we're working on now. And if you want to know more about that, I do encourage you to go to our website, learn more. It's super exciting. It's great to have community partners and funders helping us to do that work, because improving the education opportunity gap is, I think, going to make everybody's lives and get a lot of root problems that a lot of us are addressing through our program. So we're excited about that. And also that funding supports our leadership councils, which really helps us to encourage local volunteerism and support from local communities as we work to build out our presence of understanding what local needs are throughout our 20 counties. So let's see, and as you can see from this slide, again, I'll just do a quick overview. So our 2022 grants program, 124 grants went out, and it was just over $1 million. As we have these, we fund in 5 very specific impact areas, and those areas include education and youth development, health and well-being. We have arts and culture programs that we support. We want to be sure that we're investing in economic opportunity requests to build up economic vitality throughout the region. And we have our quality of life impact area, which really is about funding those things that really help make our communities places worth living and being in, and just make our lives better. So that also includes where we have our requests for animal support organizations, our humane shelters and things like that, as well as creating gathering spaces for people and creating social connections. Those all kind of fall in our quality of life bucket of programming. So I'm going to talk briefly about guiding principles. And about 4 years ago, when we went through our rebranding and developing our new strategic framework, Innovia identified 3 guiding principles to kind of help us determine where to direct grant funds in ways that really align with our mission, vision, and values as an organization. And those guiding principles are about responding compassionately to meet basic human needs, because we know if people, don't have those basic needs met of food, shelter, healthcare, those kinds of things, they can't concentrate on other things that are also important in their lives. We also want to focus on bringing people together and building inclusive communities. Creating those connections that enrich our lives and our social connections. And then expanding opportunities that reduce inequities. We know that persistent and systemic disparities diminish opportunities for people. And so that's a key piece that really drives our work related to the Launch Northwest Education Initiative, for example, of really closing the opportunity gap and reducing inequities. In talking about these, I just want to call out that a bit later in the program today, we're going to talk about how these guiding principles align and fit in with this year's application program. So the Community Grants Program is our largest competitive grant program at the foundation. Again, it's about $1 million that we distribute through this, but we also want to point out that we have a couple of other grant program application opportunities for folks. We have our Equinox Grant Program, which benefits organizations in Bonner and Boundary counties in North Idaho. That program opens generally in February and then closes in April with awards announced in July. Those grant awards range anywhere from $2,000 to $30,000. So if you are an organization serving Bonner and or Boundary counties, you'll definitely want to take a look at that. Then we also have the Columbia County Children's Fund, which does exactly what it says. It funds children's and youth programs in Columbia County. It generally opens in the spring and grants are awarded in August. And those grants are generally in the area of about $4,000. So small grants that just can have a big impact on children's programming in Columbia County. So if that applies to you, again, definitely want you to check those out. For our next stage of the presentation, I'm going to turn it over to Scott Ferguson, who again is our Associate Director of Grants, and he's going to talk a little bit about the eligibility requirements and some of the specific program questions within the application. So Scott.
Absolutely. Thank you, Molly, and good afternoon, everyone. We're honored to have you join us during this presentation. And as Molly said, I'm going to address a few core pieces of our community grants process. Starting with eligibility requirements. In order to be eligible to apply for our community grants program, we've listed the following criteria, and we'll go through that now. First, applicants must be a public charity under Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code, federally recognized tribe or tribes, units of government, cities, counties, etc., and we'll explain that a little further along in our presentation. Those who are currently have received a fiscal sponsorship by another charitable organization. And lastly, organizations providing services within the 20 county region service area of our community foundation. Next, I'd like to address and move us toward the more important information when we go through our community grants process in terms of information to know. For our community grants process this year, generally, we award a range between $2,500 and $15,000 for our community grants process. We would like to make a special note that certain applications that meet criteria that would extend to a $20,000 expectation may be considered depending on the type of proposal and expectations of the grant itself. So there is that option, but typically our community grants range between $2,500 and $15,000 per request. The types of grants that we are considering are the following. So we consider building a new program, expanding existing programs, supporting existing programs, capital projects and equipment. And this is including but not limited to technology, furnishings, equipment, vehicles, building, construction, or renovation. In addition to our point on capacity building, areas that would be considered would include but are not limited to collaborating with other organizations to improve services or eliminate duplication, strengthening governance, leadership, and staff expertise, restructuring business models and accounting practices to improve organizational stability, building and diversifying revenue streams for the organization, developing and implementing long-term strategic plans, redefining communications, marketing and outreach opportunities for the organization and project, improving volunteer recruitment, training, and engagement opportunities, and acquiring and improving impact measurement tools and resource evaluation capacity. Additionally, as you can see below, this is the timeline for this year's 2023 community grants process. Applications will open on Thursday, January 5th, and applications will then close on Thursday, February 16th, 2023. As the process is being evaluated and recommended, awards will be announced on Monday, May 22nd, 2023. And this year's grant period will be from June 1st, 2023 through May 30th, 2024. And I know during these types of presentations, good news is always welcome. So in the back of your mind, if you can hear that small drum roll, here it is. We have brought back by popular demand. This year, we have our early bird incentive for organizations who are able to submit their grant applications for our grants process this year by midnight, January 26, 2023. You will automatically be entered into a drawing to receive a $1,000 grant for general operating support. So hopefully that's a motivating incentive for each one of you to consider as you're developing your applications. But we think it's a great motivator to all organizations to consider meeting this deadline and entering into this particular drawing. Transitioning back into our process, what we would like to go through for each one of you is the process and generally areas that we do not fund as a part of our community grants process. Those areas would include debt retirement, operating deficits, or after the fact support, academic or scientific research, direct or grassroots lobbying, annual fund appeals and contributions to endowments, re-granting programs, litigious activities, and in terms of faith-based organizations, a couple of criteria. One is that proposals must be open to all members of the community or have an inclusive perspective as a part of the process. And additionally, having the expectation that the proposal itself cannot require clients or participants to participate in or adopt any specific religious practice or belief. And these are general areas that we, again, do not fund as a part of our community grants process. And now I'd like to hand it back over to Molly to share with everyone this year's focus of funding theme for our community grants program. So back over to you, Molly.
Great. Thanks, Scott. A little bit earlier on, I mentioned that we have kind of three guiding principles that we kind of look toward when determining funding, where funding is directed. This year, we're really elevating one of those principles, which is bringing people together to build inclusive communities. And that really is a recommendation that came from our regional advisory committees when we were kind of talking through what we would like to accomplish with this year's grant program. And the reason behind that there is kind of twofold. So we all recognize with COVID, we lost a lot of the social connections and opportunities for people to kind of get together, be connected, and create that social capital that is just so important to who we are as a society. So there's that, and then also recognizing that there is just a lot of polarization and divisiveness on a whole variety of issues in communities. And so to find opportunities to maybe create space for conversations, or to, again, just be inclusive of differing viewpoints and helping to create kind of ways to understand each other. So really what we want to look for is opportunities to cultivate opportunities that bring people together, build stronger connections across communities, increase social connections that support communities in advancing more caring, inclusive, and lasting relationships among people and groups. I will say that, again, that's if there's a theme to this year's program, that's it. It's also really important for us to let folks know this is not an exclusive list. As a community foundation, we do fund all kinds of programs. So just don't feel like if you don't fit in those, you're not going to be eligible. You are, but if your proposal has a way that really talks about how what you're proposing to do can build social connections, that's probably going to be helpful in this round. And then additionally, we realize it's an important part of our role as a community foundation to elevate the needs of populations that have been historically disproportionately impacted by social, economic, racial inequities. These populations are BIPOC communities, refugees, immigrant communities, seniors, people experiencing disabilities, those who are living on low incomes, folks who are homeless or unsheltered, people living in under-resourced communities, communities lacking critical infrastructure, which is, just kind of a long way of saying a lot of our rural communities fall within that category. And then people identifying as LGBTQIA+. And again, doesn't mean that this is an exclusive list, but we will do our best to ensure suitable investments within these communities. And now with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ellie, who is going to talk a little bit about the technical side of how you log in, access the grant application. So Ellie.
Hello, everyone. So our grant application is hosted on our grants portal, My Innovia, which is the same portal that we used last year. So if you created a grant application last year through our portal, then your login still exists and you do not need to create a new login. You can just log right in and begin your application when our program opens on January 5th. If you do not have a login though, it's very easy to set up. You just go to our website and click the login button and go to My Innovia. You can create your account or login from there. And to create your account, we just need some quick personal information like email and phone number. After you've put that information in and registered your account, you can connect to your organization as a pending grant administrator. And if your organization is not already in our system, you can really easily add it and connect yourself after that. You will be a pending grant administrator after taking that step. And from there, you can begin and even submit your application. Once your grant administrator status is approved, then you can view your organization's previous grant history as well. I think I will take it back to Scott now.
Thank you, Ellie. Absolutely. And so with Ellie's overview of the technical side and how to begin the application process, I'm now going to speak a little bit more to the application itself, walking all of our participants now in today's webinar through what you can expect to see through our 2023 Community Grants application. We'll begin with our first section, which really is specifically focused on organizational information. Again, the identifiers that you see listed here help to build a context for those who will be reviewing grant proposals and helping to better understand your organizations and your impact. And so some of the identifiers that we'll have in front of you here are, applicants will be asked to provide their organizational contact information, your organization's EIN or fiscal sponsor name, your mission statement, the organization's annual budget, key programs and services, the the CEO or head of the organization's contact information, populations served by organization, which we spoke to a little earlier, and lastly, board and staff demographics. This will encompass, again, building out context for our review committees to better understand your organization, your proposal, and impact. Within the next section of the application, as we move from organizational information now to the project and program request. In the second section of our application, what you'll see here are questions that really help us to define your project's proposal and program request. So initially, what we would look for in this section from each applicant is the program or project name, which is usually a one-sentence description that will serve as the title of your program. Moving to the request that requested amount for your project or proposal that will be added into the project. Following that would be the total project and program cost for the overall project. So for example, if there's a larger cost and the grant proposal is a section of that, this is where you would put the overall cost of the project or proposal. Following that particular question leads us into the proposal and selecting one of our particular grant types to help us better, the committees better understand what type of grant proposal is being requested. In some of those particular areas, we have general operating, program support, capital project equipment purchase, and capacity building. The following question then identifies a two-sentence summary of the program and project request to provide a brief description of what you hope to accomplish with the specific proposal, how the grant funds would be specifically used, and in what time period, the length of time period the proposal would start and then finish. Following that, the proposal would request in what specific counties of Washington and Idaho of the 20 county service region will the work primarily take place and benefit from this particular grant funding. The next question would identify the overall project description. So what we're looking for here specifically is a description that describes in detail the project for which you're seeking your funds. And specifically, what we're looking for is identifiers. So for example, if you're seeking funds to recruit new volunteers, please state the number of volunteers you need and discuss in detail how you would recruit them. Those kind of specifics are very helpful in the overall project proposal. So this is really a section where the applicant will really like to really take some intentional time to create the overall scope of the project and understanding of from start to finish what would be the impact, goals, and outcomes. And this is a great location in which to fulfill putting that into the application. Next, I'm going to actually hand it back over to Molly to talk about the next portion of our community grants application. So Molly, back to you.
Great. Thanks, Scott. So never fear, we're almost to the end of the application. And I want to say too, for folks who maybe joined the call a little bit late, if anybody has questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat box and direct them to me, and then we're going to take some time at the end. So if you're new and didn't get that information earlier, that's how you can connect with us. So we also have 4 questions on the application that really are designed to help us get a better understanding of how the grant funds are going to be used to help you have impact in the community that you serve. And I know some of you from previous years with this application are familiar with the Charting Impact Framework, which is a tool from the nonprofit organization GuideStar. And a few years ago, when we revised our grant application, we incorporated some of those questions, and they still are a part of our application process. There's 4 questions that I'll go through, but I do want to emphasize we're not looking for really long responses to these. We don't want this to be a super onerous grant program, so don't feel like you have to write a lot. But really just whatever you think is going to best convey what it is that you're hoping to do. And also, again, feel free to right size the responses based on your the amount of funding you're asking. I mean, we totally get a $2,500 request. Won't necessarily need the level of detail that we would want to see in a $15,000 request. So just want to kind of encourage folks to be okay with right sizing. So the first question related to the funding impact is just really how will you use the funding to achieve your goals and address the needs in your community. So just kind of make that connection. How does this fit with your mission of who you are and what you do? What are your strategies for making this happen? Really, that's just a way of saying kind of, what's your plan? Steps A, B, and C along the way, broad strokes to carry out what it is that you're proposing to do. The question about what are your organization's capabilities for doing this, that's where we just want to have you, kind of just toot your own horn a little bit. Tell us about the work that you do with the population you serve. Why are you in a good position to carry out the program that you're seeking funding for? So really just let us know all the resources that you bring to bear to successfully do what you want to do. And then lastly, how will you know if you're making progress? That's simply the question of, when you're halfway through or when the project's complete, what is success going to look like from your perspective? And we know that you know best what success looks like for the populations that you serve. So we don't have predefined metrics of, you have to serve X number of people or anything like that. So just you tell us what success would look like when you come to the conclusion of the program. So those are our 4 funding impact questions. And then that takes us to the end of all the questions that are associated with the grant application. And Scott's going to have a little bit more information about required attachments and budgets and things like that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Molly. And yes, you all are doing great. Thank you for hanging with us as we go through just the last portion of our application. So as we close out the overall application overview, some of the required attachments that we would request applicants provide really are our program and project budget, in which you can find the worksheet, the budget worksheet within the application, the link for that as you go through the process. We will be requiring a balance sheet, revenue and expense statement, a list of key staff members, a list of current board members, and then additional optional supporting documents, as you can see listed there. Documents that would help to better understand the case for your proposal and the impact of your organization as well. Moving on to additional information. And in this portion of the application, really what we would appreciate as a part of being on this application journey with you is just some feedback from you as a participant within this particular process. So what we ask here in the application is, for example, do we have permission to share this specific grant request with other funders who may be interested in supporting your work? We would love a little bit of feedback on the time commitment it took to fill out this application. We strive to improve our processes and have an iterative focus on making the experience intuitive and user-friendly as a part of our application process. So we ask for some feedback on how long the application took for you to fill out, any challenges that you faced, etc. And lastly, we would love just any specific feedback that you wouldn't mind sharing as a potential applicant for this program, so that we can continue to, again, better serve you as organizations and individuals who know how much time it takes to fill out a grant process, and we value your efforts greatly. And so this feedback is really helpful. And in fact, this year we've made some really great, progress in making our grants program process much more effective for everyone involved based on feedback we received. And lastly, which I'm going to hand it back over to Molly, is to talk a little bit more about probably a key question for most individuals on this webinar today is, what do we look for in our community grants process? So Molly, back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. We kind of just wanted to throw some of these out there because when we're talking to folks, and if we can really just kind of like boil things down to some really salient points of, what do we tend to look for in funding a proposal? And these I know are topics that in the grant review process with our committees are things that come up pretty frequently in terms of what we tend to look for. So, the program that you're proposing, is there a demonstrated community need for that? So is there some kind of, statistics from the community or whatever that really can help us understand that there's a demonstrated need in your community for what it is that you're proposing to offer? We like to see that community support is evident through local contributions or partnerships or volunteer engagement. If we can see that there are other community resources that are also in support of this request, that's helpful too. So again, if you have volunteers who are working on the program, other community partners, just kind of weave some of those things into the description of the project. Organization or organizational leadership has a track record of effective work is always really helpful to see. And I want to clarify on that because people will see that and say, well, does that mean you don't fund like brand new organizations or developing organizations, kind of that track record thing? And it doesn't have to be that the organization has been in existence for a long time with a good track record. It could be, again, the leadership. If it's, if it's an organization that's been, in the community doing work, and maybe they're working with a fiscal sponsor, but the people involved in the program have been doing that work in the community for a while. So you don't have to actually have been like an official organization doing that work for, and having that established track record. That kind of goes back to the question about capability, kind of what's the experience that shows us, again, that you've kind of been involved in this kind of work. Project has the potential for broad community benefits. Again, it's kind of easier to see, to want to know that our dollars are benefiting a large portion of the community as much as possible. So that's always kind of helpful to look and say, we're going to be able to fund a broad group of people versus 2 or 3 people, kind of thing. Does the project align with the organization's overarching mission, expertise, and long-term goals? Again, that's just kind of the mission creep kind of thing. Is this a proposal that makes sense for your organization to be doing this program? And if it's maybe something a little bit of outside what folks maybe think of your organization doing, but it makes total sense for you, just make sure that you're clear about that, because we might not know that unless you really clearly explain it. And then we just want to know that, good planning is evident. I know there's a million really good ideas out there. It really, really helps us get behind it if in the proposal we also know that there's a good plan behind those good ideas. And then one other thing that just comes up a lot, if there's any proposed collaboration with other organizations as part of this proposal, that you can talk about that those have been confirmed. It's not just like, we would like to work with this group and we would like to, and we're planning to ask this group to partner with us in this way. We'd just like to know that you've had those initial conversations to know that other partners are also behind it as well. So those are just, again, kind of just some high level things that come up pretty frequently in the process. Okay, and then on to the review process. So once you hit submit and it's off of your desk, then it's all on us to review. And we are fortunate to have a lot of staff support and community volunteers. So we have 4 regional grant review committees. We are able to divvy up the proposals to the regions that they are going to serve and have local advisory committees get together, read those proposals. We meet individually with these regional advisory groups to get their recommended priorities from the applications that are submitted. So we are really fortunate to have those volunteers being able to do that, because we don't know, local needs throughout 20 counties by any stretch of the imagination. So it's a really important part of our process. And so we've got a good group of folks to do that. And I'm also really excited to share out that we have recently added 3 additional staff folks to build out a regional engagement team at the foundation. We've been talking for a long time. We want to be more boots on the ground in communities throughout Eastern Washington and North Idaho. So we have Ellen Crabtree, who is working in North Idaho, kind of in the Kootenai, Shoshone County area. We have Dig, who is in North Idaho, Bonner Boundary County, and the Tri-County region, and Victoria Scalise, who is our representative in kind of the Palouse LC Valley region. So please be looking for them in your communities. If you have questions, you can contact them directly, or always feel free to, again, connect with Scott, whose contact information is here, about any grant questions that you might have. And I think with that, I can jump in and look at any questions that have been submitted in the chat box. So if you have a question and you haven't put it in yet, please go ahead and do that. And I'm just going to kind of start at the top and go through there. Okay. All right. So let's see, I'm just going to start at the top and see how far we get. Okay, so one question is, how should a nonprofit organization become integrated into the donor advised funding process? Is there an existing list of these funders, and who we should contact? So we do not have a like an application kind of process to our donor advised funds. If someone were looking for a list of our donor advised funds, I believe they are on our website and also in our annual report. So if you kind of want to have an idea of who has donor advised funds here at the foundation, you can look through that. If one of those folks are associated with your organization or something, then reaching out to them and encouraging them to support your work is a reasonable approach to take as somebody seeking funds for your organization. There's another question. May one organization have more than one administrator or access? So I'm looking at Ellie for that. Can you provide a response on that?
Yes, you may have multiple grant administrators for one organization.
Okay, and then I have a question. I'm a grant writer for nonprofit. Do I make my own login on the Innovia portal, or should I share one with a program director if he will be the one to officially submit the proposal?
You could do either way. So you can be a grant administrator for multiple organizations, and an organization can have multiple grant administrators. So you could have your own login, or you could utilize somebody else's login for the purpose of filling out the application. I would advise, if there are any grant writers in this call, that if you would like to create your own login to fill out an application, that you would notify the foundation once you've submitted it, that the primary contact for that application needs to be changed, because you will be saved as the primary contact.
Okay, thanks, Ellie. I have a question that asks, is a program that is open to all, but not advertised or publicized widely, is that eligible? We have a program that is widely advertised and publicized, and another that is not. Neither bars anyone from attending. So, at the very basic level, if neither program bars anyone from attending and they're open to the general public, then they're eligible to apply. So I think what we would want to see, though, is the idea that the opportunity to partake in that program is widely publicized to the community. Let's see, can you mix and match categories, i.e. program support and capacity building? No, you have to pick one of those areas, but I will say there's no wrong answer with those. It's not kind of a qualifying question or anything like that. It really is just, it's a way for us to kind of quickly and easily understand the type of request that you're making. if we read through it and it's, it's comes in under program support and it's more like, okay, this is actually, a piece of equipment, it's more like a capital request, that's fine. It's just, it's not an all or nothing kind of thing. So you can just pick one, but don't worry that, an answer is going to, in that category, is going to kick you out. Let's see. So does key staff include volunteers? If those volunteers are a key part of involvement in the program that you're seeking funding for, yeah, we absolutely would consider volunteers as key staff. Okay. If there's research to support the request, should that be within the application or as an attachment? I think either way would work. Again, when we talked about, what helps, to be able to show demonstrated need, you can make reference to that in the narrative of the proposal. And if we feel like we want more information or more clarification, we can always do that later on in the process. If it's something that's, relatively easy to include as an upload as additional information, that's a good way to do it too. We kind of don't want like, an 85-page research project to go with it. But if there's some, very concise, salient points that could be included as an attachment, that's totally great. Let's see, which regional advisory group would review a proposal for services impacting more than one region? We handle that in a couple of different ways. If there is one region where that's kind of like the bulk of the services, we will forward it to that regional committee for review. Sometimes we'll split them up. If it's kind of equally serving a couple different regions, we'll split them up to be reviewed, the same proposals to be reviewed by two different regional advisory councils. So those are kind of how we kind of take those on a case-by-case basis, because we definitely recognize that there are large organizations that serve a pretty large footprint within Eastern Washington and North Idaho as well. Let's see. Okay, so the time period for using and spending the grant funds and the program dates. So the grants will be awarded in May, and they're one-year grants. So I'm looking at Scott if you feel like you need to jump in and say anything different, but yeah, they're awarded in May, they're one-year grants. And so typically then a year later in June is when the report would be due on how the grant dollars were spent. And let's see, what if your nonprofit is based in Spokane, but will provide services, i.e. area program will benefit in other and multiple regions? So again, I hopefully addressed that kind of in the previous question. If you're serving multiple regions, we will divide that. We'll divide it out where we think it's going to be the most appropriate review process. In the selection of what counties your program will primarily serve, you can, I don't think you're limited on the number of counties that you can, click on there that you're going to serve. These 6 counties in Eastern Washington and these 4 counties in North Idaho, just indicate which ones those are that will benefit from the program. And then again, we'll get it to the appropriate review committee. Let's see, would requests for scholarship support be considered re-granting? Yeah, that would be considered a re-granting program. That's my initial reaction. If you're feeling like maybe not, or there's maybe a nuance that we're not getting on that, call us and we can visit about that. But that's kind of my initial reaction. But we could talk about it, because there could be something kind of new and innovative that hasn't been on our radar before. So let's see. Can the project match our part of the cost of the entire project have been spent before 6/1/23? Yes, before 6/1/23. Yeah, I think that would be fine. As long as it's not funded before the grant is approved. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, we would want it to be expended once the grant is approved, but before the end of the grant period, which again is 6/1/23. We can do extensions if need be, because we know things change along the way. So a lot of times that happens if you get toward the end of the grant period and, you know, for whatever reason, you need, you know, a 60-day, 90-day extension, we can have those conversations. Let's see. To clarify a previous Q&A, can one organization submit multiple grant requests? Generally, the answer is no. It would be one application per organization. The only time I think we kind of tend to make exceptions with that is if it's a if it's a large organization that has kind of like multiple different types of programming, like in, you know, like an Eastern Washington University or a Gonzaga, and they have, you know, one program that's related to economic development in, you know, in one community, and then something, you know, related to food distribution at a local elementary school. Those are two pretty diverse programs from a very large organization, but in general, no, one application. It is one application per organization. Again, if you have additional information you just want to like run by us and talk that through, we always welcome phone calls about that. So let's see. And just a reminder that any of the questions we're not able to get to today, we will work on getting posted up on our website. So I think, let's see. There was a question. So what percentage of applications are usually approved, and is there an amount that is most typically funded with these grants? Great question. It actually, it kind of depends on what region your application is submitted in. So we divvy out our dollars, so each of those regional grants review areas has a specific amount of funding that is available to award in that region. In our rural regions, we may not get a lot of applications, and so we're able to use those dollars and spread them more widely over a larger percentage of applications. I will say Spokane County is super competitive. I don't want that to discourage anyone, but that is by far the most competitive region. And, you know, we maybe fund a quarter of the applications in Spokane County that are submitted. So again, it kind of just depends on the region as to what the percentage funded looks like. Let's see. I don't think I see any questions that we've missed. I think that looks like the last one. So I think with that, let's see. One other, let's see. Okay, let's see. I'll take this one. This is kind of our last one. So yeah, congratulations on winning $5 million from the Spokane County ARPA funds. Yes, that was awesome. How do you plan to use those funds to make sub-grants to nonprofits? So that funding, early in the presentation, we talked about the funding that goes out through our different outlets, whether it's our community grants programs, donor advised, that, or our community initiatives, and the Launch Northwest educational program. The $5 million in ARPA funding is specifically for that Launch Northwest program. So that's separate from this program, and those are going out in operational costs to get that up and running. So those are not sub-grant, won't be sub-granted dollars. So, okay, so with that, I think we are at close to our closing time. So I just want to say thank you everyone for joining us. More than anything, I hope you all know we want to be here, be responsive. This is meant as an opportunity to sort of set the stage for whatever future conversations folks want to have with us. So reach out to Scott. You can set up a time to have a conversation if you feel like that would be helpful in putting together a grant proposal. And we just want you to all know that we're here to be accessible to you. So thank you again and have a wonderful evening.